Elizabeth's religious settlement was based on a Protestant Church of England, and obviously many Catholics were going to have a problem with this, but there's another group who sometimes really falls out with her about religion, and these are the Puritans. They are radical or extreme Protestants, and they're actually called Puritans because they want to purify the church of all Catholic influences. Now, given that Elizabeth has based her religious settlement around a via media, a middle way that includes some Catholic influences, they are going to disagree, and they do. To the Puritans, the religious settlement is really the beginning of the Reformation. They want to see it carry on, and they want to see the church get more and more Protestant. But for Elizabeth, after she's decided on the religious settlement and spent 4 months discussing it with Parliament, she sees the religious settlement as complete and final, and she has no intention of changing it. So that puts them on a collision course to disagree. In terms of what the Protestants are looking for, they would really like to see a church that looked something like this. They don't like decorations in the church. They want plain churches. They don't want stained glass windows. They don't want statues. They don't want any candles or any kind of decorations. They also want simple services. And they don't really like ritual. They don't like people worshipping in a way that they've been told to. They want people to worship as individuals. So they don't like rituals. They don't even like people kneeling when they get the bread and the wine at Holy Communion. They don't really want music in the services. And in terms of the priests, because they don't see the priests as being particularly holy or particularly special or a go-between between the people and God, they want the priests to wear very plain clothes, preferably plain black robes. So they don't really agree with the Church of England that Elizabeth has come up with. In some ways, they're not much of a threat, and Elizabeth doesn't have to worry about them too much. They're still quite a small group. So compared to, say, the Catholics, who were the vast majority of the English population when Elizabeth became queen, this is a small group of people, and they're mostly based in the southeast and London. So they're not spread around the country. The other thing about them is that when it comes down to it, no matter how much they complain about her and how much they complain about her church, they still prefer Elizabeth, who is a Protestant, to the alternative, who is Mary Queen of Scots, because Mary Queen of Scots was a Catholic. So they're never really seriously intending to get rid of Elizabeth, but they do challenge her and defy her and get up her nose quite often. They're also quite important. So, for example, there are a lot of Puritans sitting in the House of Parliament as MPs. They can also be quite influential as well. So, two really important members of the Queen's Privy Council, for example, were also quite sympathetic to the Protestants. And those are Francis Walsingham and also Robert Dudley. So Elizabeth does hear from the Puritans quite a lot, and every so often there's a clash. The first one takes place while Elizabeth is trying to come up with her religious settlement, and it's called the Crucifix controversy. And this is about the sort of decorations that they have in a church. The cross is a symbol of Christianity because Jesus was executed on one, he was crucified. And Puritans don't have much of a problem with that, but they do have a problem with the kind of crosses that they have in the Roman Catholic Church. Because the crosses in the Roman Catholic churches are often crucifixes, which means that they have a little statue of Jesus on the cross attached to the cross itself. To Puritans, this is seen as idolatry. In the Bible, people are forbidden from worshipping statues and images instead of worshipping gods, and those statues and images are called idols. To the Puritans, even statues and images of God and Jesus were quite blasphemous and quite wrong, so they didn't want crucifixes in their church. Elizabeth did. Elizabeth quite liked them and wanted to include them in the Church of England, but when she suggests this, muddling my words a bit there, when she suggests this, her Protestant bishops basically refuse and threaten to resign if she includes them. So in the end, there aren't any crucifixes in the Church of England, and they are left out. Another controversy is called the Vestments controversy, and this is about the clothes that priests wear, which, remember, were supposed to be really, really plain. Elizabeth included vestments in the Church of England, and she wanted her priests to wear them and to wear rather fancier clothes. By 1565, it's becoming clear that a lot of priests aren't following these rules, particularly Puritan priests. And in response to this, the Archbishop of Canterbury, whose name is Matthew Parker, it's quite a long thing to write, Archbishop of Canterbury, the Archbishop of Canterbury, whose name is Matthew Parker, publishes something called the Book of Advertisements. Not Matthew Parkery. I don't know where that's come from. Hang on. Get rid of that. And we're back to the Book of Advertisements, which is basically a list of instructions to priests about what they should wear. He also puts on a special exhibition of vestments in London to show priests what they should be wearing. But of the 110 priests who are basically told to attend and come and have a look at these vestments, 37 refuse. And then they're sacked. So that's another point at which these Puritans clash with Elizabeth and refuse to follow her rules and her ideas. There's then an issue in 1570 because the Puritans are having prayer meetings, and these aren't included in the Common Book of Prayer, so Elizabeth doesn't want them to carry on. However, the Archbishop of Canterbury then, I'm not writing it all out again, but the Archbishop of Canterbury, whose name is Edmund Grindal by that point, because it's a different one, refuses to close them down. So Puritans are having these private prayer meetings that don't follow the Common Book of Prayer. Elizabeth tells Edmund Grindal to close them down. He refuses, and as a result, Elizabeth puts him under house arrest until he dies in 1583. So she then introduces a new Archbishop of Canterbury, and he sacks 200 Puritan priests. And then finally, there's a man called John Stubbs. He's a Puritan, and he found out that Elizabeth was thinking about marrying the Duke of Alençon, who was a French Catholic. And he was so angry about this that he wrote a pamphlet which basically criticised Elizabeth for thinking about this. And the pamphlet is called The Discovery of a Gaping Gulf. And it's really quite critical and really quite personal in the way that it tackles this. So, among other things he says, is that the Queen is too old to be having babies, so she shouldn't be putting herself in a position where she could. He also accuses the Duke of Alençon of having an STD and basically threatening the life of the Queen if he marries her. Obviously, Elizabeth is not very happy with this, so she orders for John Stubbs to have his right hand cut off, which he does in 1583. When he's recovered, however, John Stubbs becomes an MP and continues to write criticism of Elizabeth, presumably with his left hand. And it also really, this doesn't go down very well. Chopping off John Stubbs's hand turns public opinion against Elizabeth, really, and in the end she has to turn down the Duke of Alençon because public opinion is so strong against it. She also, at various points, bans Parliament from talking about religion because they're being critical of her from a Puritan point of view, and then every so often they disobey her and she sends them to the Tower for a while. So overall, the Puritans aren't a serious threat to Elizabeth's reign, but they do annoy her and they do cause quite a lot of trouble for her, even so.